suddenly mean something completely different. Nothing would make sense, would it? I will explore the communication theory of symbolic interactionism, and I will critically examine both its strengths and its limitations. Understanding how meaning is constructed in our daily interactions can help us navigate relationships more effectively. While preparing for the speech, I studied foundational texts by George Herbert Mead and Herbert Blummer, as well as critiques by modern communication scholars. First, I'll give you a brief background on symbolic interactionism and its creators. Then I'll explain how the theory addresses interpersonal relationships. Finally, I'll critique the theory and suggest areas where it could be improved. In order to fully understand symbolic interactionism, it's important to first look at its origins and the people who developed it. Symbolic interactionism was introduced by George Herbert Mead. Mead was a philosopher and a social psychologist who taught at the University of Chicago in the early 20th century. In 2023, Easy Psychology wrote, "His ideas on self, society, and the role of symbols in social life have profoundly influenced how sociologists understand human interaction." Mead was deeply interested in how oneself develops through communication and social experience. His work was later examined by Herbert Blummer, who coined the term symbolic interactionism. The theory emerged from a broader effort to understand human behavior not as biological or mechanical, but as socially constructed. Mead never published a major philosophical work during his lifetime. However, an article from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, updated in 2022, found that his most famous work, Mind, Self, and Society, from the standpoint of a social behaviorist, was published after his death and is a compilation of student notes and selections from unpublished manuscripts. Let's take a closer look at what the theory actually says about how meaning is created in interpersonal relationships. Symbolic interactionism states that meaning arises from social interaction, meaning we learn what things, gestures, or words mean through shared experiences. Its key hypothesis is that communication is not simply about transmitting information, it's about negotiating meanings. Reported by Simply Psychology in 2025, symbolic interactionism delves into the intricacies of face-to-face interactions and the subjective meanings individuals attach to symbols. Therefore, symbolic interactionism is primarily addresses interpersonal relationships, such as friendships, romantic partnerships, and family bonds. In 2024, an article from ThoughtCo researcher Ashley Crossman describes how symbolic meaning can sometimes outweigh objective facts, such as teens viewing smoking as cool despite health risks. Symbolic interactionism provides useful insights into how people create meanings through interactions, but it does have some limitations. Some critics say it focuses too much on individual actions and overlooks larger social structures like class, race, and power. Large social structures can heavily influence communication, but are not always accounted for in the theory. Another criticism is that it can be too subjective, making it difficult to systematically test or predict communication patterns. In 2025, Jose from the Salk Journal found that, despite these issues, symbolic interactionism continues to evolve. Contemporary scholars are addressing these critiques by incorporating structural context while maintaining the theory's core emphasis on meaning-making through interaction. Let's review what we've covered about symbolic interactionism and reflect on why it remains a crucial theory in understanding communication today. I explored the origins of symbolic interactionism through the work of George Herbert Mead and Herbert Blummer. I then examined how the theory explains the creation of meaning in interpersonal relationships through social interaction. Finally, I critiqued the theory, acknowledging both its insightful contributions and its limitations, and addressing broader societal influences. Ultimately, symbolic interactionism teaches us that communication is not just about exchanging information, it's also about building meaning and shaping who we are through our relationships with others. Every word you say, every gesture you make does not only help to connect with others, but also to define the reality you live in. Thank you.